What is up, Flick fans, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking 50 movies in one video. It's going to be a bit lengthy, but we're talking all of the summer releases in theaters, and then a few that released straight to VOD but also came out in a couple of theaters. Austin, why are you being so specific? Because I didn't just watch 50 movies this summer that were newish. I watched a ton of movies on Netflix, a few animated films that came out straight to VOD but no theaters around me. So I'm going 50. I'm keeping it at that number. We may talk Netflix a bit later, and of course I have my August tier list coming out very soon that will include some more movies, a wider range, but this video in particular, we're talking summertime, man. Whether it's a big summer blockbuster or an artistic/independent movie that come out and maybe you just missed it, you didn't get the chance to see it, but very soon it will hopefully drop and you'll get the opportunity. But I am doing this list a bit differently from what I normally do. Normally I have my tiers laid out as awesome, great, good, okay, meh, bad, and awful, but since we've already placed these movies in those categories because I do come out with a monthly tier list, so you probably know exactly where I'm going with a lot of these films, but hey, we're recapping the summer, it's a fun time, and I did change the names of the categories, and we start out at the top with the best, the best of the best in my opinion. What movies hit me the hardest, which ones were my favorite? That's the top. Then we have which movies are a must-see from the summertime. Which movies did I have a great time with? Which ones did I have a good time with? What are some films that, maybe it's worth watching? Maybe they're not worth watching. It's all up to kind of your personal taste. Movies that are, in my opinion, maybe worth the skip. Skip it if you have the chance, sure, but it's not one I would necessarily recommend. Then you have a hard pass for me. It's like, if you have the chance to see this movie and then do something else, probably gonna tell you to do something else. And then the bottom of the barrel, get on out of here. I don't want to see you. Just get out. So hey, that's how we're doing this today. Not going to put them in order from 1 to 50 like I normally would on a tier list because 1, I want to save that until the end of the year, and 2, if you really want to see that list, it's on my Letterboxd. I have all 150-ish movies that I've seen this year, but we can talk about that at another time. Let's get into this because it's going to be a long video, and we start with The Intruder, and honestly, this is one I completely forgot I even saw. And it did have potential because Dennis Quaid, he was doing Dennis Quaid things, and I really liked him in the film. He was over the top and wacky, but everyone else in the movie, they just took it way too seriously. And it's one of those films I look back on all of these months later and I say, yep, get out of here. It wasn't worth my time. Not to the level of a skip, I would say to a level of one that I don't think it measures up to the competition surrounding it. And it really is one of the worst movies that I saw this summer. That's not necessarily a good stigma to put on a film, but we're going to move on regardless. Next up is The Angry Birds Part 2. And The Angry Birds Part 2, I was interested to see if this could surpass the original. Wasn't the biggest fan of the first. Now, I know this franchise absolutely has its fans, and there is some fun to be had. If you were asking me, Austin, should I see this movie? I would probably tell you to skip it. And that's why I'm going to put it on the skip it category. It's just not one that I ever see myself going back to. It is slightly, in my opinion, better than the first. And I know critics liked it and this and that. It's not one that sticks out to me. Wacky humor, characters making fart jokes nonstop, and it's just a film that I never see myself revisiting. But hey, if you're of age, if you're a fan of the franchise, if you like the first, then you can watch it. But if you're asking me, I would probably tell you to skip it. Next up, now, this is what I would consider to be a Chinese epic that just so happened to drop in a theater near me. Now, it didn't get a wide release, but it did get a limited release, and there are a few reviews on YouTube if you want to check it out. Phenomenal director. It really does work with the concept of yin and yang. It involves one army going up against another army, but it's not all about the fighting. It's not all about the action. It's not really what you anticipate from a Chinese blockbuster-ish movie of sorts. It does hold some of the better performances I've seen all year, though, and it is one of the most well-crafted movies I think that I've seen over the entire summer, and because of all of those things, I'm going to say Shadow is a great time. And if Shadow comes to, whether it's a theater near you or it drops on VOD and you get the chance to see it, I would 100% recommend it, and I would say you're probably going to have a great time with it. Now, the next film we are talking about is Ma, and this is Octavia Spencer's movie, and I don't mean, it's not one. You know what? If you want to watch this film, know going in that there's a bit of lunacy with the entire concept because it's all about this woman who, finds this group of kids. She becomes a bit too friendly with the few of them, and then as they start to reject her, she gets more and more obsessed with them. It's ridiculous, but it's so entertaining in its own weird way. I can't sit here and say it's a great movie, but hey, if you're in the mood for a film like this, I would absolutely say maybe you give it a chance, and that's why it's on the maybe tier. Then we come to John Wick Chapter 3. Now, John Wick Chapter 3 was one of the most fun theater experiences I have had all year. Listen, I loved the way this thing was filmed. The action was incredible. The story was ridiculous at times. The way that this movie ends, I'm like, oh, that's the one thing out of everything that's happened. That's the one thing I don't know if I can buy. Then you start to think about it. It's kind of the Batman argument. It's Batman. Of course he's going to find a way. It's John Wick. Of course he's going to find a way, or he's going to survive, or this or that, man. It is John Wick. Can't wait to see another movie in the franchise. And in my opinion, out of all of the movies I've seen this summer, this is one of those that I would say is a must-see. Now, if you haven't seen the other two movies, see the other two, then you must see the third one. I love this movie, and it is one that I'm definitely going to watch as soon as it comes out. Oh, it's out! So I'm going to go watch it again very soon for the second time. The next movie on our list is Brightburn. And I'm going to get this one out of the way. I'm going to put it on the maybe tier. It is one of those films that I was hoping would be a good time or a great time. I can't necessarily get it that far. I think for a lot of people, it is going to end up being a good time. It is exactly what you expect it to be. My big issue is I needed a bit more from the story. I needed a bit more from the entire concept. Now, it is a world that they're probably going to expand, and the way that the movie ends, it kind of sets itself up for a future dark, DC-ish universe, which could be really cool. The kid was terrifying in certain scenes, and he did cause the damage that you wanted him to cause, just didn't give me any more. Because of that, I would definitely say watch it if you want to, and that's why I put it in the maybe tier. Now, here's a movie that I did not expect to be a good time at all, but it ended up being a good time, and that is Crawl. I saw the trailer for Crawl. I said, this is cheesy. But then Sam Raimi's name pops up at the end, and you're like, wait a second. He's producing this? And then you see the director, and you pay more attention to the talent. Then you go in and watch the movie, and yeah, it's ridiculous at times, in the same vein as Ma, but I think the execution of the premise was better than Ma, and I do think it is one of those films that it does what you want it to do, man. It's all about the alligators attacking the people, and you see it. It's gory, it's violent, it's intense, and just the entire concept of the raising of the water and them having to go to higher levels and just kind of running through this maze throughout the entire movie, it's entertaining. And what do you want out of a summer movie? You want entertainment. And that is why, for me, Crawl is a good time. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Now I've talked about this movie quite a bit, and here we go. MCU fanboy, Marvel shill. Listen, I grew up with this franchise. I started out Iron Man 2008. I was 13 years old at the time. So really, the culmination of this entire thing, it's not me being, well, Disney's going to pay me for this. No, it's not that, man. I would feel the same way if the DC movies did something similar, because honestly, I'm probably a bigger fan of the DC characters. But the execution of what the MCU has done so far on the big screen is just phenomenal. And everything came together for me in the perfect way, and it's everything I wanted from this film. 3 distinct acts. Really 3 different movies, but the way that they intertwined and the way that they came together at the end with that epic battle, those epic moments, and the incredible score, everything about this movie works. And it is one of the best movies I saw this summer. And here's where I throw this in super quick. Austin, technically the summer movie season starts at the beginning of May and ends at the end of August. And there are still more movies to come out in August. Well, I understand that, but the movies coming out next week, they're not, I mean, there are movies on this list that aren't summer blockbusters or summer-esque movies, but I say Angel Has Fallen was kind of the final push that summer had for us this year. May not be 100% accurate, but then I wouldn't be at 50 movies, and that just, it sounds good for a title, right? And technically, the Avengers came out like a couple of days before the beginning of the summer movie season this year. But let's face it, the #1 movie of all time ran all throughout summer and just recently became #1. If that's not a summer movie, I don't know what is. So I don't want to get caught up on technicalities, but I do want to let you guys know that, in my opinion, it is one of the best movies of the year. And let's go straight from one MCU movie to the next. Well, at the time when it came out, I don't want to get into that right now. We're gonna keep the Spider-Man controversy out of this as I shed a tear and wipe it away from my eye. Listen, I think Spider-Man Far From Home was a great time because of how they have built Spider-Man up in the MCU. So, man, that kills me so far. And the integration of Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, I thought was wonderful. The first 15 minutes of the movie, I'm like, I don't know if I love this. And then as soon as it kicks in, as soon as you get certain reveals throughout the film, and the way that it ends, that cliffhanger that would probably never be answered, I need to stop talking. Spider-Man Far From Home is a great time. If you love this franchise, if you love this character, you're absolutely going to at least enjoy this movie, and that's why I place it on that tier. Next up is A Dog's Journey. Not A Dog's Purpose, not A Dog's Way Home. This is A Dog's Journey. And I did not anticipate myself putting this even on the maybe tier because all of the movies in this vein, or most of the movies in this vein, they completely fall flat. But lately, the last two that I watched, and we'll get to the other one here in just a bit, they're not good movies, and I'm not going to say it's a good time, but I think it will be a good time for a lot of people. Now, good time is an interesting choice of words when you're talking about a movie revolving around dogs. You know, dog goes away, another dog comes in. It is a repetitively sad film, right? And you feel that way about all of the movies in this vein, but it does what it has to do. And hey, if you're a dog lover, that's why I put it on the maybe tier. Maybe this is one for you. And I do think you guys should check it out if you enjoy movies like this. And if you don't, then it's one that I could say skip. But because there are two different audiences, I'm putting it in that category. Then we come to Midsummer, as some call it. And yeah, this is Ari Aster. This is a must-see movie. I was actually kind of disappointed when it got a D+ cinema score because I'm like, no, I wanted it to get an F. Listen, when an audience member goes into a movie like this and they don't know it's an A24 film, they don't know it's an Ari Aster movie, they don't know it's this artistic movie that's gonna do everything that you don't anticipate if you're part of the general audience, then those audience members are most likely going to come out absolutely despising the experience because it shocks you. That's what Hereditary did for me last year, and it is what Midsommar did for me this year. Now, I probably should put it on the best tier, but I do want to save that tier for my top 3 films of the summer. And because this is slightly outside of my top 3, I'm going to put it on the must-see, but it's still a must-see movie. I mean, if you're a horror fan, if you're an Ari Aster fan, if you're an A24 fan, if you just love messed up films, movies that you can go back, rewatch, and just notice things that you never thought you would notice before, Midsommar, for me, deserves to be on the must-see tier. One that is not on the must-see tier is 47 Meters Down Uncaged. And yeah, this is a hard pass for me. Now, it wouldn't be as big of a hard pass as the first movie. I actually think the sequel is slightly better than the first because it expanded on the concept. It's giving you more thrills, more chills than you anticipated yourself getting. And the acting is slightly better, but that's not saying too much because we're not here for the story. Same case with Crawl. We're here to see people get attacked by sharks. And in this case, you know, work their way through the darkness and overcome different obstacles. And that part of the movie was entertaining. My big issue with this film is it takes 55 minutes to even get to that point. And prior to that is a bunch of nonsense that you don't care about. Horrible acting, a bad script, abysmal dialogue, everything you don't want in a movie like this, but everything you're going to get. 47 Meters Down is a hard pass, and yeah, we're going to move on. Next up is one that shocked me, surprised me, and I absolutely loved, and that is the Peanut Butter Falcon. It is a must-see. It's a recent movie. It just went wide release, semi-wide release this past weekend, and oh my goodness, guys, Shia LaBeouf's performance is magnificent. Zach's performance, though, our lead in Zach, oh my goodness, guys. This guy is awesome, deserves more work. You have Dakota Johnson. Everything about this film is just so heartwarming. It's all about a guy who breaks out of this institution-like atmosphere and goes to follow his dream of becoming a wrestler. And it's just the adventure between two friends. And I always say this, a movie about friendship, a movie about brotherhood is one that's going to break my heart and get me invested. It got me invested, and it executed on the premise. And it really was just a magnificent, magnificent experience. Next up, we come to Men in Black International. This is sad for me. I'm going to say skip it. I'm going to say skip it because it did not even come close to my expectations. Not that they were super high, and that's the sad thing, right? You have Chris Hemsworth, you have Tessa Thompson, you have F. Gary Gray. Everything about this movie should have worked, but it didn't. It fell flat. And then you hear that there's trouble behind the scenes, and maybe they didn't agree on everything they should have agreed on. Even my mom walked out of this movie, you know, not a hard critic. She's a casual movie fan, and she goes, yeah, I don't think Chris Hemsworth was feeling that movie. I don't even think the story measured up to his acting abilities. I'm sitting there like, Mom, you go, girl. She understands. I think a lot of people understand that this movie should have been better than it was. It's fun enough, and that's why it's not a hard pass for me. But if you have the opportunity, I would say skip it and watch one of the movies above it on this list. Next up is X-Men Dark Phoenix. Yeah, this is a hard pass for me, and it stinks because it's so obvious that it's going to be a hard pass because I didn't like the trailers very much. I wasn't excited for the movie. We had heard bad things. The embargo release date was like the day before or day of the movie. Everything about this movie was falling flat. And the fact that Fox is now Disney's, and this was the last movie in the franchise with these actors. And it stinks because I love this cast. I love these characters. I love everything they had built up. Even Apocalypse, which I didn't love, but it was good enough to make me go, yeah, I could get behind a Dark Phoenix movie. And then they did it, and it was this, and it just, yeah, I'm done talking about it, though. Next up is, now, this is kind of one of those, I'm going to throw this in here. This is called The Wandering Earth. This is a Chinese, I mean an epic Chinese blockbuster. It's still, I believe, in the top 10 highest grossing movies worldwide all year. It made so much money there, but us in the United States didn't get a theatrical release. Did come on Netflix, and I know I said I wasn't including a Netflix movie, but for that country, this was one of the biggest movies of the year. Didn't come out in the summer there, but it did technically release in the summer here. And once again, I gotta get to 50 movies, man. It just makes sense. And I did miss a few, so there are a few on this list that I haven't seen. But The Wandering Earth, for me, is one of those that I would say, maybe you should watch it. Now, there are clear issues with the story. There are times when I'm watching the movie going, this is so cheesy, maybe too cheesy for its own good. But it is a visual spectacle. What do you want in a summer movie? You want beautiful visuals. And it is chocked full of CGI that was actually really, really good. It does kind of feel like it, you know, The Day After Tomorrow and even an Independence Day at times in space. And the whole concept of it is ridiculous. The Earth is moving with these big turbines and everything. But it was entertaining, and that's why I say, if you see it on Netflix, you want to watch something that's a bit more grand scale than maybe even belongs on Netflix, I'd say maybe you should watch it. And that's why I put it on the maybe tier. Then we come to Booksmart. Now, Booksmart is one of those, I haven't gotten the chance to go back and rewatch it, but I want to see it so bad for a second time, and I'm going to put Booksmart on the must-see tier, guys. This is one of those movies, cracked me up. And we'll get to another movie here in just a bit that is probably the funnier movie of the year, but this humor was a bit smarter, and the movie is great. The filmmaking is awesome. Olivia Wilde did a wonderful job. Caitlin Dever really stole the movie for me. She was hilarious. Her quirky nature in this film, oh my God, she's so good. And I can't wait to see her in more things. We'll talk about her again here in just a second. But this entire film, Billie Lourd though, let's just talk about Billie Lourd. Stand out. If you guys have seen the movie, she's the crazy girl. She's the crazy girl that keeps popping up. And every time she popped up, I cracked up so hard. Booksmart is a must-see movie. It is not, once again, Peanut Butter Falcon, Midsommar, Booksmart. They're not summer blockbusters, but people that are saying, well, no good movies came out this summer. What have you been watching? Yeah, what have you been watching? Next up is Aladdin. Now, I'm probably a bit higher on this movie than a lot of people. I'm going to say Aladdin was a good time because I thought it was a good time. And you know why I thought it was a good time? Because I was anticipating nothing. Didn't like the trailers. Thought the clips released online were like, didn't like the songs. at first. Then I start watching the movie and I'm like, kind of like the songs, a lot better than the trailers. Guy Ritchie's direction is not impeding on the story. What is happening? And the fact that I liked it more than another movie we're going to talk about later on this list is incredible to me. And Aladdin was really fun. Will Smith kind of stole it from me, and it is a good time. If you haven't seen it, I think it's one that's worth watching. Next up is Seth Rogen, Charlize Theron in Long Shot. It is a comedy that, it really shocked me with how much I enjoyed this. And it is a good time, but it's also one that shocked me so much, and I laughed so hard during certain scenes, and it's just simply a lovely / wonderful movie that gives you great performances by both lead actors. I'm going to say Long Shot is a pretty great time, man. I had a great time watching this movie. It's not one that, stuck with me as hard as I thought it would, because I thought it would, could end up in my top 20 movies of the year. It's not there, but it's very close, and it is a pretty great time in the theater. And if you're at home right now and you need something funny to watch and you're not a big fan of this over-the-top Good Boys comedy, and kind of the same case with Booksmart, Long Shot is that one for you guys. Next up is Ugly Dolls, and, I believe, might be wrong, I think Ugly Dolls came out the same weekend as The Intruder. Well, it's not too late to pair those two back up and say, get on out of here! Just get at, listen, Ugly Dolls was, and I could see how you watch this and you think it's cute. I understand that, but for me, it's just like, we're going to hire all of these great, famous, not great voice actors, but all of these famous people. We're going to use their voices, and we're going to use the talent and the fact that they can sing songs that will be trendy and make kids happy, and the movie didn't make a lot at the box office, so obviously it didn't work that well. But man, did they sure make a fine paycheck. I just didn't buy any of it, guys. I didn't buy the emotion. It's one of the most forgettable movies I've seen in quite a while, and that's why it was where it ended up being, yeah. Next up, we are talking Good Boys, and Good Boys is suitingly a good time at the movie theater. Now, I said one of the funniest movies. It is probably the biggest gut-bursting laughs, right? You have those movies where, maybe not every joke works, and that's the case for this film. Some jokes completely fell flat. My audience was just sitting in silence, and that's not good. But the ones that worked, man, they nailed it. I mean, they nailed it. And it's hard to get consistent comedy from kids of this age, because these are young kids, man. But led by Jacob Tremblay, all right, you're off to a great start there. And then they all worked. All three of the leads, they worked super well. The supporting cast is great. It is kind of a day in the life of the kids, and not much plot, not much story, but you don't need that with a movie like this. You just want laughs. It gives you laughs, and it is an absolute good time in the theater, and it's a good time whenever you get the chance to watch this on VOD, whatever it is. Now, one movie that wasn't necessarily a good time for me is The Hustle, and The Hustle is another hard pass. It tried its very best to feel like movies of old, movies that came out, were great because of the concept, but they flip it on its head, and then The Hustle is just kind of a female version. It didn't work, and I like Rebel Wilson, I like Anne Hathaway. It tried to be cunning, and it gives you this big twist at the end. Spoiler alert, really, who cares? And you see the twist coming from a mile away. And it just kind of fell flat. It's a hard pass for me, and I don't want to spend too much more time on it, honestly. Next up is Rocket Man, and Rocket Man is a great time. One that I hope a lot of people don't forget about, mostly because Taron Egerton is one of the best actors of his generation, his age group, if you will, and he really showcases that with this movie. I mean, he is phenomenal as the title character of Elton John. You have Richard Madden, you have Jamie Bell, who put in a heartfelt performance. I mean, the cast is great. The musical element of it, at first, I'm like, I don't know if this is 100% working for me. And then you get into it, you're 30 minutes in, you're 45 minutes in, you're swept away. And the ending wasn't as grand as I think it wanted to be, but it was still beautiful. The movie's a great time. It's absolutely worth watching. And what a performance. What a performance. Just magnificent. Then we have Toy Story 4. And you guys know, listen, I loved this movie so much. Like, more than other people that I know. I'm one of the only ones that has it in the top 5 movies that I've seen this year. And yeah, obviously, I'm going to say it's one of the best movies of the summer. It's a billion-dollar earner at the box office, but that doesn't make for quality. The fact that you get, I believe his name was Josh Cooley, coming in to direct this, very different direction. Some of my friends weren't the biggest fan of the direction that they took with Woody and what happens between he and the gang, and the fact that they didn't showcase the gang that we love as much in this film. My argument for that is the fact that, we saw that in Toy Stories 1 through 3. This wasn't that story. This was a Woody story. And it did kind of relegate some players that we know to the background, but the story that they were telling with he and Bo Peep, I was completely on board with, and I loved every second of it. And the tears, man, at the end of this movie, the tears, they were coming down. It did get me emotional. The music and the visuals. One of the best visual movies I have ever seen from Pixar. It was a gorgeous film. Because of that, I think it's one of the best movies I've seen this summer. Maybe you guys don't feel the same way, but my goodness, guys, Toy Story 4, way better than I thought it was going to be because I wasn't the biggest fan of the trailers. Next up is Detective Pikachu. We are rolling, man. Woo, what a long list. This was another one. Shocked with the fact that this was a good time. Absolutely shocked. Not that I didn't think it was going to be. I thought the trailers were fun. I'm like, Ryan Reynolds, this is great. But it's one of those, you see it and you're like, this could fall flat. I mean, it could absolutely fall flat and ruin video game, anime franchises forever. And it didn't do that. It was a fun time. You can nitpick the plot. The story is conventional. The third act is extremely cliche. And it's like, they're doing that thing. I don't know why they're doing that thing. But it was fun. I rewatched it. The jokes still made me laugh. Ryan Reynolds steals the entire movie. The acting from the humans, not the best, but once again, it does fit for what kind of movie it's trying to be. Because of that, it works. Next up, we're talking about the final release date-wise movie on this list, and that is Angel Has Fallen, the, as far as we know, finale to the Fallen trilogy at this point, which I did rank on my Patreon page, if you guys want to go check that out. Didn't do it on this YouTube channel. And it really was, in my opinion, the last bigger movie of the summer. Ended up number one at the box office, or is going to at least. Angel Has Fallen is, it's one of those, I'm going to say you can skip it. And I not that I was disappointed. It was better than I thought it was going to be because I thought London Has Fallen was not very good. Olympus Has Fallen, my opinion, was good. I would put that on the good time tier. But this is one that did exactly what you expected it to do. You have a bit of fun with Gerard Butler. You have a bit of fun with the fact that Morgan Freeman is playing the president once again. And there are some really good action scenes. It's just the plot is convoluted, so predictable, just down to the casting. They cast people, it's like, oh, you're casting that guy? Well, we know he's not a good guy, so you expect us to believe that twist. So many things in there where I'm like, you could have done a better job, but Angel Has Fallen is one for me I would skip. Now, obviously, if you've seen the first two movies, you're going to want to see this one. You might get some fun out of it. I would say skip it. Next up is a review that I did not review on my YouTube channel. This was a Patreon exclusive, and that is, I still might review it on YouTube, and that is Loose. And Loose is one, it ended up surprising me with how much I actually enjoyed it. Loose was truly a great time. Very close to the good time tier, but what gets it over that hump is the performance by Kelvin Harrison Jr. I did have a comment on my letterbox saying, well, I think he was a bit over dramatic. He didn't play it in the way that I think the actors should have played it. I understand that argument, but this is all about a guy in high school who is looked up to be the guy. He's the smart guy, he's the athlete, he is a respectable young black man in his community, but he doesn't feel that way. It's like, why is all this stuff on my shoulders? And maybe he's doing some things in the film that aren't the best things. Maybe he's not the most respectable guy, or at least on that level of what people think of him. So many interesting layers, and he does have this feud with his teacher. Once again, we have Octavia Spencer on this list, and that feud was pretty fantastic. Their back and forth throughout the entire movie was great. It's just a very different kind of dark comedy-esque coming-of-age story. Manipulative characters all around, and I love a good story like that, and Loose really was a great time. Next up is Skin, and Skin is an A24 movie. I mentioned Jamie Bell earlier with Rocketman. This is Jamie Bell's performance. I mean, he completely stole this movie for me. Now, it was a VOD release, so am I breaking my rules? I did see that it released in a few theaters here and there, so I'm going to count it on this list. And it didn't come to a theater near me. I did have to wait until it came out on VOD, but Skin is one that I would probably end up saying it was one I'd say maybe you can watch. And I usually don't say that about an A24 movie. A24 consistently delivers in my eyes. I was a bit disappointed. What carries this movie for me is Jamie Bell's performance. It's all about a guy who is trying to escape this racist cult, if you will. These guys who have been dragging him in his entire life and marking him with tattoos. And then you see his progression out of that society. He finds love. He has children. He starts removing his tattoos, but they don't like that very much. There's your conflict. Sounds like an exciting story. Well, it didn't execute, I think, as well as I wanted it to be, but I just loved the vibe of the movie, and it's one that if you get the chance, maybe you should watch it. Next up, we have Child's Play, another one I'm going to put on the exact same tier. I'm going to say this is a maybe for me. Now, it ended up being better than I thought it was going to be. I would say it's a solid, positive-esque movie. I would give it a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes, barely, but it was kind of fun. I like the changes that they made to the character of Chucky. Didn't mind Mark Hamill at all. He sounded like Mark Hamill, of course, but he was great as this doll. And I loved his relationship with Andy in this movie. It really was what got me through the entire thing. The humor worked. It was a fun movie. It was a bit forgettable, and the plot didn't do anything revolutionary. But overall, if you're a fan of this franchise, of course you're going to watch it. My maybe would turn into a watch it, even though I can't quite get it there on that good time tier. Next up is The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Now, this is a film, it took me a bit to appreciate the fact that it was a great time, or it ended up being a great time. It's an A24 movie, once again, and it really is just so artistic. It took 20 minutes to figure out what the movie was all about, but what it is the main character, he has a best friend. They do everything together. And what he wants to do, living in San Francisco, he wants to reclaim his grandfather's house. He just doesn't know how to do that because he doesn't have the money. He figures his way around all of these things, but then he just starts to realize, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing what I have believed my entire life that I should be doing. And the character conflict is incredible, and the friendship between the main two characters is beautiful. It's an artistic film. I think if the script was a bit stronger, it could be in my top 10 movies of the year. Didn't quite get there for me, but it's a beautiful movie with a beautiful, beautiful score. There's a song on there that really breaks my heart every time I hum it or think about it. Next up is Hobbes and Shaw. We're trying to roll through this because this is a long, long video. Hobbes and Shaw is a good time. It's a good time. Didn't expect it to be a good time. Not that I thought it would fall flat, but I would have predicted maybe, because of the lack of a great story. And there still wasn't a great story, but the chemistry between Jason Statham, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson carried this movie so far. The cameos by some actors that I don't want to talk about yet in case you haven't seen it. And the action. I mean, the fact that you got the director of John Wick 1 and certain other movies, Deadpool 2, you bring all of those elements together, you're going to get a fun summertime, get you a bucket of popcorn and just crunch down and enjoy what you're seeing on screen. It's ridiculous. So are most of the other movies in the Fast and Furious franchise. And if you like those, I think you're going to like this. I think you're going to have a good time with it. Unless you think too hard about the story, then you probably won't. Next up is Dora the Explora. Not one that I was a big fan of. I'm going to say skip it. Now, a lot of critics will tell you differently because this did get some positive scores. And listen, I'm not sitting here hating on the fact that it was a female lead. And I did see some critics. I'm like, come on, guys. Listen, for the fan base, if you're a fan of the character of Dora, ignore skip it. Watch it, because you're going to have a bit of fun with it. And I love when she was breaking the fourth wall. Actually, the first 25-ish minutes of this movie were really, really fun. But then you hit that wall of, now they're going on the adventure, and it's a clear ripoff of Indiana Jones movies, and they're doing the thing, and the thing is not entertaining, and the CGI is bad, and you start to think too hard about it. I'm going to say skip it, but I clearly am in the minority of people who wasn't the biggest fan of this movie, but I have to stick to my guns. Next up is Annabelle, Far From Home, Homecoming, Coming Home. Annabelle is the home. Hard pass for me. This movie did not work near as well as I wanted it to. I kind of forgot everything about it. It was built up to be this, it's a haunted house and she's walking through the Warrens' basement and it's going to be this big, crazy, scary thing. I thought the direction was pretty tight. I thought the cinematography was good. It's the story. Oh, God, the story was lacking, and I just didn't feel the tension that it was trying to build up. I really didn't. It just felt like every 5 minutes, jump scare, predictable jump scare, and it grew old after a while. Clearly, I've been talking for a bit. I'm like out of breath. I need some water or something. Probably should get that. Next up is Blinded by the Light. Now, another one that I think I'm in the minority on, because while I'm going to put this in good time, I know a lot of people who are saying this is one of their favorite movies of the year. And listen, if you feel that way, I get it. It is, for me, that movie was Sing Street a couple years ago, and I had seen the comparisons to Sing Street with Blinded by the Light, and I do kind of feel that way in a sense. It didn't quite nail what it was going to nail, and what got me about Sing Street was the brotherly aspect, and that is not here, but it is all about a child and his father, a father and a son, that relationship, how that gets strained and torn apart because maybe the father doesn't want, because of cultural aspects of what they believe in, doesn't want his son to do what he truly wants to do. The end was absolutely heartwarming, and there's some great moments. I mean, some great moments. Didn't quite get there for me because there were other moments that didn't necessarily have the impact that I think they thought that they had. But this is just me kind of saying why I didn't put it on the great tier. It's still a good time. It's absolutely a good time. And I would absolutely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Bruce Springsteen and his music, because it's showcased heavily. Then we have Ready or Not. This is a very recent movie, just reviewed it last week, and wow, did not ever expect putting this movie on the great time tier. Just a shockingly entertaining movie. Knows exactly what it is, does not compromise the integrity of the story, and really the showcasing of talent. Samara Weaving, oh my God, her performance is great because it's perfect for what she's trying to do in the film. It's just fun. It builds up lore. It establishes the fact that we have these wacky characters who are aware that the situation is ridiculous, but they're aware. I mean, the only thing I didn't love was the visual color palette of the movie, but that's such a dumb complaint, guys. This movie was a great time, and it is one of the more self-aware movies I've seen all summer. That and probably Crawl, but wow, I can't believe I liked it as much as I did. We're going to keep this trend going, and we're going to move on to The Art of Self-Defense, which is another one that I believe is a great time. The Art of Self-Defense features a great performance by Jesse Eisenberg. It's about a guy who goes out, gets beaten up by this gang, and he wants to learn how to defend himself, because at the beginning of this movie, this is not a guy who's going to be defending himself. Maybe by the end, things change, and the entire journey, his introspective look into who he is throughout the entire film, it's a bit slow, it's absolutely artistic, but hey, you're in it because you know exactly what it is, what it's going to be, and The Art of Self-Defense really surprised me. It's one I want to go back to and revisit because I do believe it could move up my Letterboxd list. Thoroughly enjoyed this movie, guys. Now we come to The Kitchen. I'm very close to putting The Kitchen on the get out of here tier, but there's some things in there that are good enough for me to say it's hard pass. Not a glowing recommendation, obviously. Melissa McCarthy's performance is good, and heck, Tiffany Haddish and Elizabeth Moss, their performances are good. Nothing wrong with the acting in this film. Heck, you got Domhnall Gleeson in there. But it's the story. It's the convoluted nature of the plot. It's the fact that I'm 45 minutes in going, where is this movie going? What is the trailer? I saw this trailer, and I'm like, this could be this, but it ended up being that. And the that wasn't the this is not good. This movie is a hard pass for me. And I'm so disappointed with how they adapted this DC Vertigo comic. So disappointed. Then we come to Anna. And Anna is not a very memorable movie. And because of that, I'm going to say you can skip it. Now, there were some things in there where I can look back and I say, you know what, I enjoyed this element. A lot of twists and a lot of moving through time. They start out in the present, they move to the past, and they go to the future, and they go to the present, and the past, and the future. A lot of things happening in that movie, but you know what? The acting was really good. Some pretty solid direction other than the whole time jumpy jump thing. And the script wasn't all there for me, but Luc Besson, his movies, you expect one thing. I got what I expected. I was just underwhelmed with a lot of the elements of the filmmaking, but once again, really solid performances. And now we come to the other dog movie that I was talking about earlier. This is The Art of Racing in the Rain. And while I'm going to say this is a skip it for me, it did end up being a bit better than I thought it was going to be. And the reason why I say that is because when I was watching this movie, I was overwhelmed with how bad the script was and just how awful the acting was, and there are just so many things that make me look at it and say, how did they not capitalize on this? Because while some people complain, I liked Dennis Quaid as the dog. I thought his voice was really good. It was different than I expected it to be, because I'm like, that doesn't match up, Dennis Quaid and the dog. But that's like, no, he's telling the story. He's old, he's grizzled, he's broken down now. And anytime that was happening with that voiceover, the movie worked. It was the human story and the acting, and when these films kind of focus on things that maybe they shouldn't focus on, they don't work for me. This movie didn't work for me, and I'm going to say skip it, but if you love dogs, I love dogs, still didn't love the movie. If you love dogs and you were a fan of this book, then I definitely say watch it. So just because I'm putting a movie on a certain tier doesn't mean that you guys have to feel the same way. This is all personal opinion. Oh, we're going for a long time. Okay, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Let's get this out of the way because this is one of the best movies I saw. You're not because I'm a Quentin Tarantino fanboy, not because I am a shill over his kind of movies. Listen, there are a lot of shots of feet. It is definitely Tarantino just kind of building himself up and saying, I'm Quentin Tarantino and I'm gonna do this, and but for what it was, and the fact that it was showcased on a level that was just so intricate within the filmmaking, and the movie is just an absolute blast. I watched it with people who don't know who Quentin Tarantino is, aren't even expecting what's going to happen in the movie because they thought it was a Charles Manson movie, and people who believe that going in, I wouldn't think would enjoy this movie to the level that I did. But they walked out and they were like, that was great, man. I mean, it was great. It's a great friendship relationship between two friends. And then when you go to Sharon Tate's story, it's showing the bright, young, up-and-coming actor in Hollywood. Then when you go to Leonardo DiCaprio's story, it's like, oh, he's worn down, he's grizzled, he's maybe not the guy he used to be. But for me, the guy who stole the movie is Brad Pitt. Everything about his story was fantastic. It really is a great piece of work, and it's one that I watched in an artistic theater. I'm like, this is the perfect setting to watch this film. It's a gorgeous movie, and I would absolutely recommend it. Next up is The Secret Life of Pets. Now, I have fond memories of this film, mostly because we went out and we got my dog Buddy the day the day I watched it, which was 2 weeks early than when it was coming out in theaters. So because of that, I have good memories of the experience. The movie, on the other hand, I would probably say to skip it. It is a bit better than the first, in my opinion, but the problem with these films is it doesn't capitalize on the fact that you have the secret life of pets. What do pets do when the humans aren't there? When they spend 15 minutes on that, I'm like, yes, this is what I want, Illumination. Do this for an hour and a half. But they don't do that. They spend 15 minutes and then they go on their stupid adventures, and I didn't care. I cared about one of the adventures moderately. The other two, it's the same case as the first movie. More funny jokes, more moments I laughed at. That's why it's a skip it for me, but not much higher. Ugh, another controversial film. One that I don't think a lot of people would put on this tier because I got so much backlash when I said I just didn't care about Godzilla. And you know what? The more I thought about it, the worse it got. Sorry, it's not one that I'm ever going to revisit. I got so bored during this movie, and it's incredible because it's one of the best trailers I've seen all year. The music is awesome. The visuals are great, and there's so much more Godzilla. But one thing I will say is, even though I was bothered by the fact that the first movie didn't showcase Godzilla enough, I watched the second movie, I'm like, maybe the first movie was onto something kind of building up to this because there was no build up with this movie. It's just, we're going to put a monster here and a monster here. But the human story, and when they're focused on the monsters in the third act during the battle, I'm like, yes. But then we'll get 10 seconds of that and it'll cut to the humans, and I'm like, no. It's kind of the same case with The Art of Racing in the Rain. When they go back to the humans, I'm out. I've automatically tuned out. Give me something else. And for me, that was a major bummer. And that's why it's still a skip it for me. Next up is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is one that I'm going to say is a maybe. It's a maybe because some great horrifying elements to it. Guillermo del Toro's name is attached to the movie. You feel his presence in this film. And I thought the makeup, the visuals, the practical effects, the special effects for the most part were really good. It's the story and the fact that I didn't gravitate towards the kids near as strongly. And we're a bit spoiled because we get a lot of movies and TV shows with great groups of young actors. And not to say these actors weren't great and talented and whatnot. I just didn't connect as much as I wanted to. And it's just the in-between. When they're not doing the scary things, movie's not working as well for me. When they are, it was great. I'm going to say it's a maybe because it's according on what kind of audience member you are. Next up is Shaft. This is one that I also experienced a bit of backlash on because I'm going to put it in the hard pass category. It's a movie that felt full of itself. It's like, and it's not, oh, we know what we are and we're going to appeal to our audience. And I do think there's an audience there that it appealed towards, but it just felt so on the nose. And it's like, this movie, I just feel like it was an early 2000s film. It felt like the Shaft movie in the 2000s, except I think that one worked significantly better than this one. You know what I think the real problem is here? Tim Story as a director. I just don't think Tim Story is that good of a director. And the movie felt sloppy, choppy. Some of the acting wasn't very good. And for me, it's a hard pass because it's not one that I look back on and say, that was a very good experience. I didn't find it funny. Listen, if you find it funny and you find the characters relatable, then I think you may put it up a little bit. But everything didn't work for me except for Sam Jackson, who is the best, as he's just the best, as always. Next up is Stuber. Stuber is a comedy that I wanted to work a bit better than it ended up working. But I am still going to say Stuber is one that is, it's a maybe for me. You know, if you want to see more of a buddy cop team up, less of a raunchy comedy, less of, teenagers, and you're not a big fan of Seth Rogen, then skip all the ones above this and go straight to the maybe tier and watch Stuber. I will say the action was pretty good. Dave Bautista's pretty good. Kumail Nanjiani goes for every single joke. And I've never seen a joke from him fall flat until this movie. Jokes fell flat. But when they nail it with his character, they nail it. Some really good aspects. Some aspects I wasn't the biggest fan of, but it is a maybe for me. Here's another one that's a bit controversial for me. I'm going to say When the Dead... Is it When the Dead Don't Die? I can't remember the name of the movie. For goodness sakes. Yeah. It's one of those that I look at and I say, Jim Jarmusch... he's a great director, and the cast is so stacked. Bill Murray, Adam Driver. I mean, you've got everyone you need to make a great movie here. What happened? I mean, it was so slow, and there's so many characters that come in. You think you're going to get a story out of them. The story cuts off, and they never explain why they're in the movie in the first place. Like Selena Gomez's character in that group of friends. I get it. It's to prove a point, and everything here stands for something, and I understand that. It didn't go over my head. I get it. It just didn't work for me. It was really, really boring, and it's not one that I ever want to go back to. And it's a shame because I was so excited for this movie. Then we come to Them That Follow, and I said Caitlin Dever was going to return to this list, and she did. She's really good in this movie. It's all about this church in a place similar to where I used to live, the eastern foothills of Kentucky, and while I didn't know anybody like that, this movie showcases some people that actually do exist that believe that if the snake does not bite them, then God is blessing them. If it does bite them, well, then there's this something a bit wrong. I didn't review this movie on YouTube, by the way. I did review it on my Patreon page. Them That Follow showcase some very interesting concepts. Walton Goggins, I mean, he was great in the movie, and the performances are magnificent. It's just not a story that stuck with me. It's not one that capitalized on, I think, the idea behind it. I thought the themes and I thought the layers to the characters were going to be a bit more in depth. They didn't end up being that. I wanted so much more from the story, but it was still high quality enough of filmmaking for me to get on that maybe tier. But if you're not into that kind of thing, that's why it's a maybe for me. Then we come to, gosh, my voice is hurting. Woo! Then we come to Yesterday. And Yesterday is a really good time. Right next to Blinded by the Light, I think where it belongs. A lot of people will tell you that Blinded by the Light is significantly better. And I do have it a bit higher on my overall yearly list, but for me, they're both good times. I mean, Yesterday didn't do everything I wanted it to do. I wanted it to be on the great time tier. I wanted it to really execute on the Beatles' music. There were some songs in there that they didn't utilize. There were some ideas and some themes, and heck, even some characters that just fell by the wayside. I loved the funny friend. It's like, where did he go throughout the movie? I get it, you gotta focus on the main character, and the performances were great. I mean, really, really great. But I just wanted more from the movie. That being said, it's really fun. It's really heartfelt. The character dynamics are just the best, and you just feel for everything that they feel for each other, especially that main two couple. And that's why Yesterday, for me, is a good time. You know, I lied to you guys earlier, because I realized I did this. I said I was going to put The Farewell on the must-see tier, or I said I was only going to have 3 movies on the best tier. Well, you know what? Sometimes you make a mistake. I'm putting The Farewell on the best tier. The Farewell is not a summer blockbuster. That's not what it is. It's A24. We're talking about the studio again, just constantly putting out great stuff. This is one that hit me so hard. I mean, I cried in the movie. I'm not ashamed to say that. Awkwafina's performance is phenomenal. The grandma in the film, oh my God. But it's all about a family who knows that the grandma is dying. They know she's dying, but she doesn't know she's dying because they have elected not to tell her that she's dying. And Awkwafina's character, she's struggling dealing with this because she believes it's not the right thing to do. We should tell her. We should let her know. And the emotion, the care that you see from the characters, how much they all love each other, even though they fight and they bigger. That's what a family does. They love each other, and the performances are magnetic, and the filmmaking is gorgeous. The shots, the music, the way it was composed, the way, oh, I just want to see this movie again. And, you know, I experienced similar things with my grandmother who's in a nursing home, so I related to the story. If you think you're going to relate to a story like that, definitely watch it. If you think it's too much for you and you're going to cry, you should still definitely watch it because it absolutely is that. Wow, leaving the most controversial one for last, Austin. Okay, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say The Lion King is a maybe. I'm going to say The Lion King is a maybe, and here's why. Because there are people on one side of the fence, and then they go drive a couple miles and get on a bike and then keep traveling and then go to where the road cuts off and just keep walking. And there are people over there. There are people that hate this movie. There are people that love this movie. It's one that clearly most people have seen because of the box office impact, but it's one you have to see for yourself and make up your own mind. Are you on the side of it's phenomenally animated, some of the best CGI I've ever seen, it's a visual just feast for the eyes? I'm on that side. Or are you on the side of, you know, the expression, the emotion, it just wasn't there. They didn't emote in the way that I thought they should. That didn't have the impact of the original movie. It's just not as good. I'm also on that side. So that's why, for me, The Lion King is a maybe. I can see both arguments. Not everyone's going to be in the middle. I think most people aren't going to be in the middle because, you know, everybody's got to have one opinion or the other these days. And I feel that way about certain movies, but The Lion King is just one of those for me. It's like I can see both arguments. That's why I went with the score that I ended up going with, because I get it. I get both sides. Had a good time with the movie. Haven't really thought about it since. What does that say about the film? I don't know. You guys decide. It's on the maybe tier. Oh my goodness. How long has this video been going for? I don't know at this point. I still got to edit it. But oh my goodness. This was a stacked video. Now, we look at this list and we see, what did this summer give us? Well, we have quite a few movies at the bottom portion. But we also have quite a few movies at the top portion. Why did you not have a lot of movies on that bottom list, Austin? Look at your letterbox list, and there's a ton with low scores. Well, once again, not including the Netflix films. And a lot of the movies that are my least favorite movies of the year, they are Netflix movies, so they're not going to be on here. But only two that are, get on out of here, because, you know, they don't deserve to be here. But there are quite a few at the top. And if you haven't seen any of those films, and definitely those top 3 tiers, maybe the top 4, I would 1000% recommend you guys to seek them out, find the release date if they're already out of theaters, or go to the theater and watch them, and treat yourself to a nice summer movie, or heck, a summer television show. That's another list for another day. Wow, my voice is gone. This was a great video. Appreciate you guys watching. I know I've been plugging my Patreon page this entire time, and you can definitely go over there and check things out. I have a weekly show, I have a daily show, I have movie reviews, and all of these things starting up over the last few weeks, and man, we are rolling on that page right now. Once again, you guys are the best. Check out all of my live streams, everything we're doing on this channel over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be an awesome month, the month of September, and I'll see you very soon.